With so many companies working with teams spread across the globe, real-time collaboration has become one of the greatest challenges of the 21st century. In this episode of UpTech Report, I speak with Patrick Harr, CEO of Panzura, a company that's using AI and machine learning to analyze data, offer multi-cloud data management solutions, and help global teams work in real time. In addition to discussing some of the massive technological challenges modern companies face in managing their data on the cloud, Patrick talks about the core values he's learned from flipping burgers and delivering pizzas, lessons that can be scaled to enterprise systems. Thank you so much for joining me, Patrick. Excited to learn more about Panzura and how it started and where you guys are headed. And also how are you innovating and continuing to learn and grow? To start us off, what year did Panzura start, and when did you join?
So the company started a little over 10 years ago in 2008, and I joined about 3.5 years ago.
Gotcha. And where are you guys located, headquarters-wise?
So we're in Campbell, just outside of San Jose, California.
Nice. Now, bootstrapped or VC funded?
So VC funded, raised a little north of about $90 million over that period of time.
Got it. And how big is the team now?
So we have about 225 employees. We are worldwide in nature. We've got folks and developers really across the world, as well as salespeople.
What's the core industry here? Gotcha. The headquarters being there.
Yeah.
What's the core industry that you're focused on serving right now?
There's two core industries for us. They're both very, related. It's all about data for us. On the one side, we have a global file system, which really helps customers quote, move into the cloud, and second, take advantage of the cloud in terms of being able to interact with file-based data, store that data. It's not atypical that we see about a 70% cost reduction versus our traditional competitors like NetApp, Isilon, and other on-prem file systems. The second market that we play in is really the growth market for us is machine learning analytics. A lot of exciting things going on in big data, quote, big data. You probably heard statements, data is the new oil. So really for us, it's about how do you analyze that data and get patterns to that data for our customers.
It really is. I keep hearing everyone says, I have all this data, I should do something with it. But trying to do something with it, that's a whole nother thing. And that's your growth area right now, you said?
Yeah, both are growing very well. So on the core, what we call our global file system, it's what's called Panzura Freedom. It's really built around this notion. If you ever read the book, Chris Christensen's book, he really focused on why do customers buy or what job do they hire you for? At a core, I really like what's going on in a macro trend basis. You have a global collaborative economy. And what I mean by that, you can no longer work in isolation. If you're just here in San Jose, you can't really tap into talents that may be in Boston or in Mumbai, China, et cetera. So that's one. Second, I typically have a globally distributed business. So I have offices in Europe, I have offices in the Middle East, I have offices in APJ, and I also have offices in the US. That presents a challenge when it deals with data. And more firms, these distributed teams are working on this data simultaneously. So whether I'm a gamer, I'm building a game, whether I'm an engineer designing a bridge, or an engineer actually building chips. We have a lot of chip companies, Intel being one of those here in the Valley. Or if I'm a medical industry, right, I have distributed from a healthcare hospital side, I have multiple offices around particular locations. Finally, I could even be in financial services, and I've got offices all over the world. At its core, how do I help teams collaborate in real time together? So I can either get a game out on time, on budget. If I'm a software developer, get a software package design and get that out to market. At its core, what the job that we're hired to do is help these companies collaborate in real time, make these distributed teams much more productive. And in turn, our customers see huge productivity gains. They lower their cost. And oh, by the way, they're natively integrated into the cloud. That's really a side benefit. It's not the core benefit for why they hire us. The second aspect for why they hire us is as we brought a significant amount of data, we currently manage about 100 petabytes of data in the cloud. And that's distributed across AWS, Azure, Google, as well as private clouds. That data sat dark before, meaning and you really didn't know where that data sat, what type of data it was, what was inside that data. So we introduced a new service called Vision.ai. And Vision.ai is a ground up new platform design at its core, technically, it's a hyperscale platform, meaning it scales. The bigger the data, the bigger the number of users. It'll grow with them to millions and millions of users and petabytes of data. But at its core was, how do we look inside that data, give more insight, more analytics, more pattern matching, so I can now turn that quote data into oil, really drive a lot of value and insight for that customer. There's a secondary benefit too, particularly with compliance, GDPR, other regulations where data, Patriot Act is an example, where you have to really control where data sits. And so as I was saying, this is no longer a world about just innovation, it's about integration. It's being able to co-opt all the great ideas in this open community fashion. And inside Vision, we harness the power of that open source world and for analytics. First, at its core, we use Kubernetes and containers for mass scale out design. We did add a quote proprietary layer here, which is our own unique IP, which is called the Vision Block Object Service. And all this means in the analytics world, you want to be able to keep your data, huge data sets and online and always available, always fast, never tear it off. Much like Gmail, you never want to delete it. In the analytics world, you never want to delete your data, but all the other platforms are challenged with because of cost, because they technically run in what's called block service. If you look inside of Amazon example, EBS is very expensive versus object storage, cloud storage. So we use the power of kind of the cost effectiveness of object store, but at that performance of block. But that's at the core. We marry that with Kubernetes and Cassandra, all the great things. That's where we store metadata. We then put on top of that an orchestration layer, again, inside of Kubernetes. And then on top of that, the Open Elk environment, which is Elasticsearch, Logstash, Kibana. And in there are thousands and thousands of developers who have added insights and analytics for almost everything you can imagine, and data connectors from networks to computers to IoT devices. The net of this, now we effectively have the best place to run Elasticsearch on top of this platform in a much more cost-effective manner. You'll then see Spark is another huge open source analytics database that will run on this. So at its core, what we're really good at doing is stitching this stuff together, running on that proprietary layer so you get 10x disruptive economics, but still maintain huge performance gain and advantages, and then put an open marketplace on top of that. So through one click, I could deploy any of these analytics modules. And so while open source is great, the cloud's great, you also want to follow the cloud kind of methodology where you make it dead simple, stupid, and don't have to do any OpEx. And so some of the challenges in open source is pretty complex. You have to have a propeller head. Nothing wrong with that. A lot of businesses don't want to operate that way. And so we've been able to marry all the greatness and integration of open source together with the cloud, with our own proprietary area, and to really deliver something that's truly unique and innovative into the marketplace.
There's always growth and learnings from where you continue to move forward. Anything that you can share that other businesses, entrepreneurs can learn from, and hopefully maybe avoid having to go through a similar hurdle?
Yeah, I think we're always continually learning. I probably shouldn't say this, but I crossed over the big 5-0 and I continue to learn every day. I grew up pretty poor. I worked every job you could possibly imagine. I remember I started at Taco Bell, worked at Fuddruckers, flipping hamburgers through bags at United, delivered pizzas, did many odds and end jobs, worked my way through college. But at its core, what I learned back then and continues to be present today is you got to work really hard, listen to people, really identify what they're looking for to get ahead. And in turn, you got to be able to put that grit, right? Always hire people. And that's the reason why I talk to each and every one we bring into the company. Do they have the passion, the persistence, and really the planning to be successful? And as I looked at today, what have I learned and some of the things that we've gone through? One key aspect that I will tell you, when I joined the company, we were an appliance model. Not only were we an appliance model, we were appliance and perpetual licensing. And for those of you who don't, that's really CapEx licensing. The cloud is more OpEx focused, right? And subscription focused. And finally, it's also software focused. It's not necessarily hardware. So I would tell you one of the big learnings and that I had gone through and been very successful in doing it, but it was a hard process. We first moved from an appliance model to software. We now represent over 90% of our business is pure software. The second piece is we shifted from a CapEx model to subscription model. Each one of those changes is not easy. You undergo a change with customers, you undergo a change in your financials. And in fact, you'll hear this notion of these trial of disillusionment as you move from CapEx, where you're taking all the revenue up front, to OpEx, where you're taking revenue basically monthly or on a yearly basis. So a lot of hard work, a lot of learnings through that process, but and perhaps I should write a few blogs on this because there are lessons learned. Sometimes you get some scars on your back. But it was actually great to go through that model because we're really aligned back to that core of why do customers hire us and how do they buy us. And now we're aligned very much with, quote, the cloud-centric economy, where you buy on a subscription basis. You're basically able to deploy on demand, whether that be in the cloud itself, on the edge. And again, it's much more self-service. So
looking forward, where do you see in 5 years the business?
So, I came into this business, every time you take on a new job, large or small, you have your personal opportunity cost. So you really want to look at its core. What are macro trends or things that you are passionate about, you believe in? And so for me coming into Panzura, I really, number one, I felt that we would continue to have this huge growth of unstructured data. If you divide data into two types, unstructured data and structured data, structured data is really database tier data. So meaning it's structured because I can put it in a tab or a column or a row inside of a database. Unstructured data is video, it's IoT data. It's data you can't necessarily easily form into those database rows. In that world, 90%, depending on who you're listening to, 80 to 90% of all data now is unstructured. So I felt coming in that we had this huge growth of unstructured data. Second, that we would continue to see the accelerant to clouds. And I do say clouds because I felt, just as in the past where you had best of breed versus single stack, and I've been around the block a few times now. Back in the 90s, it was all about the Microsoft stack, and then it was the VMware stack. And today it's about the AWS stack. Great company. But I did feel that we would move into not just a single cloud, but multiple clouds, right? And customers would want to take advantage of the best of breed approach. So that was a second dimension. I felt opportunity costs, that would be a great opportunity. Third, I did feel that the more and more analytics, more insight that we could bring to bear, or you could bring to bear into unstructured data, it would really offer a tremendous opportunity for any company to take advantage of that and offer to its customers. So with that as a backdrop, we really focus on executing, number one, again, coming in the company, how do we deliver the number one global cloud file system? That really helped companies bring all this data into cloud-based environments, help those companies collaborate on that data in real time, do all the, let's call it the boring things in IT, do automated backup, automated DR, business continuity, all that good stuff. And oh, by the way, help them reduce their costs by 70% in managing this huge growth of unstructured data. So I said as core, focus very much on that, delivering the highest quality solution, be the best maniacal support company that delivered that high net promoter score. So we accomplished that, right? And second, we also delivered Vision.ai, which gives us really just tremendous insight into this data.
I imagine in order to achieve this vision, though, and ride the wave of this industry, there's also a few hurdles you're going to have to figure out and overcome. What do you see as one that right now that's on your scope?
Yeah, I think as a small company, you're always fighting every day to drive value for your customers. And so I'd say this, just number one overall, you have to continue to maniacally listen to customers and innovate with your customers as fast as possible. And one of the key challenges you have, particularly in this valley, is out innovating others, right? And so you have to continue to do that. And perhaps I'll come back to what I said before. That means you have to be able to tap into the best talent, not just here, but worldwide. I think those that are able to tap into the best development talent, because at its core, you're as good as your engineers are, and how you're meeting those requirements for your customer and listening to your customer. And so that is a challenge, particularly again, living in here in the Valley. Google, Apple, Facebook pay very, very big dollars for the best talent. And so, certainly a challenge, but also an opportunity for us is to tap into that best talent worldwide in a global nature to be able to deliver on behalf of our customers. Second, I always like to say there's for every great idea, there's a mother, behind 10 other great ideas, right? That are simultaneously working on that. So it comes back to that innovation. You have to get out of bed every day to work as hard as possible on behalf of your customers. And I know those are both related, but those that get complacent die. This valley is littered with great technologies that perhaps didn't necessarily continue the innovation curve and continue to grow.
How do you personally innovate yourself? What are you looking to? What are you reading? What are you looking at to keep yourself fresh?
I mentioned, I'm kind of a big fan of Chris Christensen and some of his books. I was at a CEO summit. Coastal Ventures is one of our investors, and they invest in some of the coolest technology across a very, very different broad spectrum. And that the one book was effectively, why do customers hire McDonald's for a milkshake? You're like, why the heck would you even talk about a job of a milkshake? But it's amazing when you read some of these different analysis and analogies that the highlights you can get out or the learnings you can get at it. So one, I really focus on a lot of blogs, a lot of books. But interestingly enough, and perhaps this is also what gives part of the edge. I've got 4 kids from
Nice.
Just out of college till elementary school, and just continually seeing all the technology and the interaction points that they're utilizing really keeps abreast of some of the key trends that you see. And I mean, some of the things that my younger kids do in technology is pretty incredible. They're just very immersed. So I think also keeping abreast there. And finally, I coach basketball, and if you ever want to learn management 101, teach 3rd and 4th graders how to play basketball that have never played. You just can't assume anything. And I only highlight that because you really get more of the soft aspects for how to coach and work with people to help them grow.
Where can people go to learn more, and what would you recommend as kind of a first good step for them to take?
Yeah, first great step if you want to get insight into Panzura and Vision.ai is actually take a test drive on Vision.ai. Vizion.ai. You can set up your own account. You can start get a little insight, search your data, get some, do the analytic aspects that I talked about, experience the machine learning.
Get a greater vision on your data.
Vision on your data. Then second, come to Panzura.com and you can experience our one global file system.
Have you seen a company using AI, machine learning, or other technology to transform the way we live, work, and do business? Go to UpTechReport.com and let us know.